Hi, my name is Cal Beyer. I'm pleased to be with you today for the Ironworkers and Impact Joint Virtual Conference. I'm sorry we can't be together with you in person, but I'm looking forward to speaking about ironworkers in crisis. And I'm really pleased to be joined today by Sean Neely. Sean, say hi to our audience.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Neely. I'm the District Council President of New England, and I'm very happy to be here today. I wish we could all be together, and I'm as excited to be here on this panel with Cal as he is to be here with me. It's a very important subject, and I hope we all get something from this today.
Thank you very much, Sean. It's been a pleasure partnering with the Ironworkers through 2020 and the pandemic. And it's my great pleasure to be part of this organization now as a consultant, helping the Ironworkers and Impact address mental health, suicide prevention, and substance use disorders. Sean and I titled our topic Ironworkers in Crisis because this has been an ongoing crisis that we've been talking about: mental health, substance use disorders, suicide prevention, as we build a culture of caring in the ironworkers and signatory contractors that are members of Impact. Sean and I are very pleased to share our perspectives today. We're going to talk about the perfect storm in construction that's been compounded by the pandemic. We're going to talk about the crisis for ironworkers and why this is so important to Impact. We want to set the table and talk about why this crisis exists. And then Sean and I are going to have a very personal conversation. It'll be a continuation of his October 30th, 2020 webinar, where he talked about personal battle with addiction and the work that Local 7 and Local 37 are doing in New England and Massachusetts. And then we're going to conclude by sharing resources for the district councils, the local unions, and signatory contractors on how they can take these same first steps. So the crisis in ironworking, the pandemic exacerbated the existing issues that construction has had with mental health, substance use, and suicide. Today, we're not going to share a lot of statistics. We're going to have information on the Impact webpage, but the pandemic has worsened mental health. It's created isolation and loneliness. It's compounded stress, anxiety, and depression for many workers and their families. It's contributed to increasing misuse of substances, alcohol, and opioids in particular. And the risk of relapse during this isolation and the lockdown of substance use disorders has unfortunately created a problem with overdoses. And I'm really proud that Sean's going to share some of the solutions that those locals have taken. Many issues in this past year rocking our nation: the civil unrest last year, the recent riots in Washington, D.C., contributed to many veterans and first responders in construction experiencing PTSD, post-traumatic stress, and iron workers from traumatic workplace injuries and other experiences have also had triggering events for post-traumatic stress. And all of these factors combined, unfortunately, have led to iron workers having the highest rate of suicide among all construction trades. Why does this crisis exist? Sean and I want to share a number of factors, but that isolation and loneliness, this continues to be an issue. The pressures that our families face, some of the states where lockdowns occurred, caused real financial pressures. But family pressures, having hybrid school, families being unemployed or underemployed, this compounded a lot of those pressures that families have had. Workplace injuries have contributed to chronic pain, which led to some self-medication, led to some substance misuse. Our industry has the second highest rate of binge or heavy drinking. That's 5 to 7 drinks in a single setting multiple times a month. 16% of construction workers report substance misuse, and that's what's been self-reported. Many people suspect it's higher. Sean's going to share some of the treatment and recovery options that have been tried and tested and proven to work in Massachusetts. And we need to continue to promote care seeking to break down the stigmas that create barriers to workers finding help and finding recovery when problems exist in their homes or in their personal lives. So Sean, it's time for us to have that personal conversation that we've been looking forward to. I really admire the work that you've done. You've been a personal hero for me and many others. The webinar that you did with Dave Argus of Caris and Caris, Tom Gunning of the BTEA, and you on October 30th touched a lot of people, myself included. I've heard from a lot of ironworkers across the country and signatory contractors that were really touched. So Sean, love to have you share your personal story of addiction and how you overcame those personal issues and how you're helping others.
I share my story for a couple of different reasons. One of the reasons is I hope to break down the stigma that surrounds addiction. And the other reason is to make it easier for people to reach out for help. So my story begins where I tied my boots one morning to go to work like I did every other day, not expecting to get hurt and become a drug addict for the next 10 years. It was in the beginning, I could fool people, I could be discreet, I could move around, I could blend in. And in the middle and the end, I couldn't hide it from anybody anymore. Even though I thought I was hiding it from people, the only person in the end that I realized I was fooling was myself. I've gone to 4 different detoxes. I'd like to tell you that every time I went, I really felt in my heart that when I came out of there, I was going to stay sober. I was going to stay clean. And I've come to learn that the reason why I wasn't successful, and that doesn't mean that I was a failure. I just wasn't successful at that point. And I learned from each time. You can take the drug out of your system and not be physically addicted anymore, but the problems are between your ears, in your mind, and your behaviors. And until I changed those thoughts and those behaviors, I just couldn't get sober. So the last time I went away, my wife in front of my 2 kids told me that they couldn't watch me die a little bit every day. And I had heard it before, but it struck me that time. And she told me, go away and get help and really try to do it this time, or just go away. And, I'll be very honest with you. The things that I did under the influence of drugs, I would never do. I would never, ever do when I'm clean and I'm sober. It strips you of every good thing that you have inside of you. I was so honest that people didn't even want to talk to me sometimes, and I became a liar. I wanted to be with my children. I came from a broken home. I wanted to be with my children every minute of the day. I didn't want to miss anything with them. And when I became a drug addict, they came second. The drugs came first. The love of my children, the love of my wife, my job, none of it mattered anymore. The addiction just took total control of me. And it went on for 10 years. And if in the beginning, when I got hurt and they gave me the pills, you told me that I'd be addicted for 10 years, I wouldn't have believed you. And I wouldn't have believed that it could ever get as bad as it got. But it did. We spoke on another webinar, and I gave a few personal stories about what I had done to my children, what I had done to my wife, how this disease not only affects me, the addict, but everybody in your family. The people that we hurt the most are the people that share our last name. And that was the last thing I wanted to do. But that's what I did. Broken promises, lies, cheating, all these things that I wouldn't do sober. I did them high. Every line in the sand I drew and said that I wouldn't do that, I stepped over that line, and I justified it every time. Until it became, like I said at the end, my wife told me, we can't watch you die a little bit every day. You have to leave. And I had been in and out of my house for a couple of years. And and I thought it was okay. I had a beautiful wife and 2 children at home, my own home, a great job, and none of it mattered. In the end, it wasn't even about getting high anymore. It was about what we call getting normal. I just didn't want to be sick. It was the fear of being sick that really, it's an obsession. You get so afraid to be sick that you'll do just about anything to use. And I felt as bad at the end. The emotional pain was as bad at the end. The drugs stopped working. Nothing took me out of that pain because every time I came back from being high, all my problems were still there. And I compounded them again by what I had done for however long the run was that I was on. So I think I'd like to, move on to when I got sober and how I got sober and the changes that happen inside of me and why I do what I do today. Because again, I'll say it again, this is very uncomfortable. It really is to speak to a bunch of strangers about personal things that we're talking about today. And it's a hard conversation that needs to be had.
Sean, but it comes from your heart. It's called lived experience. It's a person who's lived the pain, lived that struggle, who's fought for their sobriety. And you told me also that there was a lot of support along the way. You've referenced your spouse, despite tough love, stood by you, and your children, who you have solid relationships with. You've also mentioned to me friends, and you've let me know about others who were really significant to you. So you didn't handle it alone. And you also had second and multiple chances, right? You had people who were there for you. And that's important for people to know. As dark as that got, you still saw light come through. Some days was dark, some days was glimpses of light, right? Not always in the shadows.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And yours is a very powerful story. So thank you for being brave and courageous. And you're going to help many people by sharing your story.
And that's what I hope. That's what I hope we do. Even if we change one person's mind or one person comes forward and says that they need help, that's why we do this. The one thing that I did get the last time I went to detox was I got hope. I actually had hope that I didn't have to feel the way I was feeling forever. That I never thought that I would be forgiven by my children or my wife or friends and family. And over the course of time, staying sober, what I thought were my greatest weaknesses have now become my greatest strengths. I can help people with kindness, with compassion, with understanding because I've been there. And I had iron workers when I didn't care enough about myself, they cared enough for me to help me get into detox and to get straight. And they've been beside me still to this day. Um, it's just, it seems hard to do, but it's easy to just reach out and maybe 3 little words can change somebody's life. If somebody's feeling depressed or anxious or going through a substance abuse problem, sometimes just walking up and saying, "Hey, are you okay?" It can make a change in somebody's life that somebody actually cares. And what we're doing with the ironwork is through the international. When you hear the general president of the ironworkers, Eric Dean, talk about this and take this so serious and bring a guy like Cal Bayer on with all his experience to help us with this, it speaks volumes, I think, to the membership that it's okay to reach out for help. Nobody's here to hurt you. We're here to help. There's so many resources for people. And people just need to know that if it's coming from Eric Dean all the way down to the local union level, that we're here to help. I think that will break down the fear and those barriers that and it's stigma. And that is the fear and that is the barrier that when you do reach out and say to somebody, I'm hurting or I need help with a substance abuse issue, that they're not going to judge you, that they're not going to turn you away, that they're going to point you in the right direction. And all those things happened for me. And that's what gave me the hope that I could change, that I could be the father I wanted to be. I could be the husband I wanted to be. I could be the iron worker that I wanted to be. And so what I found really was that by opening my mouth and speaking up, which is difficult, uh, it made a change in other people's lives. We started an AA meeting at Local 7, and it kind of changed the culture in Local 7. Um, the business agents and the people at the hall would see, we'd see guys come in and women and show up to our AA meeting, and you'd see them get their 30-day chip, and they're putting weight back on, and they're getting color back in their face, and they're smiling. And just that alone changed the culture in that union hall, that when somebody came in there, they weren't a bad person. They were a sick person that needed help. And I would speak about it at every union meeting about depression, anxiety, substance abuse problems, that there's somebody here to help you and somebody that you can trust. And it's made a big difference at Local 7. You can walk into that hall and you can ask anybody in there, I need help. And they won't put your name on the street. They won't judge you. They'll call Modern Assistance Programs, our EAP, who are incredible people who've done so much for our members. And not only our members, but we have the relationship where if there's family friends or iron workers that have lost their insurance coverage, they'll make phone calls and get those folks a bed. I have a great relationship with the Gavin Foundation that we talked about. They have a detox, they have 3 halfway houses, and they have what's called the Cushing House, and it's for 16 to 21-year-old kids. And we work very closely with them. If I need a bed for somebody, I can call them as well, and they'll find us a bed, usually that day, because I know how frustrating it is I know for myself, when I was making those calls, when I didn't want to tell anybody what was going on in my life, and I would make those calls and they'd say, call back at 5 o'clock, call back tomorrow, you know what? No, that just sent me to, like, you know what? I'm trying to do something and nobody's helping me. So that was an excuse to go get high again. And there are no good excuses for going to get high again. And that's why reaching out to those professionals, they have the contacts with the halfway houses. They have the contacts with the detoxes, and it makes it easier for us to get people in.
So Sean, that employee assistance program, the EAP, you're using Modern Assistance. You've had me speak with John Christian. That's a really unique program. It's been built over time. You've also mentioned that nonprofit, the Gavin Foundation. You've also had support from some contractors in New England as well. And there's 2 that you've referenced. You've talked about Karis and Karis, and you've talked about Boss Steel. Can you talk about how they've supported ironworkers in bringing people back to work, and kind of the crews that they've put together and the process, how that partnership came about? I think people would find that really hopeful.
Yeah, it's amazing what Dave August at Karis has done. So I spoke about this before. We had such a great relationship with the Gavin Foundation. They've helped so many of our members in so many different ways that at one point I was with Dave and we were talking, and we went to the Gavin Foundation to ask, we needed members. We have a probationary program, and we brought in three guys that had gone through the Gavin Foundation program, who had construction experience, who were vetted, and we brought them in as probationary members for a year. Those 3 members finished our apprentice program. Dave would put them on, give them a job. They treat them like family. They drug test them more often than other companies. And it's a safe place for them to go to work with other sober people. We also have Boss Steel. They're a big steel erector in Boston. And the AA meeting that we have on Monday nights at the Union Hall, I think more than half of those folks work for Boss Steel. And if we have a member that's just getting out of detox and he's struggling and he needs a place to go where he can be safe during the day, Boss Steel will hire him, and he'll be in a sober gang with sober guys. and they watch each other's back, and they keep each other sober. And it's amazing what they do, because it's really hard when you come back to work out of detox, back into the same routine with the same people. It can be very difficult at times, especially in early sobriety, because all it takes is one bad moment and one bad decision. And it's life or death. It's not just I'm going to lose my job or I'm going to lose my family. We've seen too many people lose their lives. And since October, we've lost 2 people to overdoses and a young woman to suicide in Local 7. So this seems to be every month we're burying another member. And that's why our members are in crisis and they need help. And this culture of caring, I think, is going to go a long way to doing that.
Yeah, it's really powerful. You and I have been working with Kevin Burns with the Ironworkers Chief of Staff, and then Kevin Hilton with Impact CEO. And it's powerful to have that partnership of those 2 gentlemen with the support of General President Dean, but to have so much support throughout the organization, the signatory contractors that are learning in these monthly webinars that are being done. We'll share some information in a few minutes. But Sean, this gives you hope, doesn't it, of what your trade, your ironworking profession, your organization is doing. And look at you in a leadership role, how you've turned your life into serving others, right? It's powerful. It's a great testimonial. So how does that make you feel for the future? We're in a crisis now, but how does that make you feel?
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for the future. I'm like I said earlier, when you hear the general president of the Ironworkers International take this head on, take this serious issue head on, these issues of depression, suicide, anxiety, drug addiction, and not in a way that they want to hurt anybody, in a way that they're saying our members need help. And to the contractors, our members, they're your employees. And if we could all get on the same page, the contractors, the union, to see this as it's a crisis. And there are ways that people can get out of crisis. And it's a lot of times it's just that one, like I said earlier, one guy walking up to somebody and just asking if they're okay. Or one guy coming forward to somebody that they can trust that will point them in the right direction. I see only good things coming from this. We have to have these hard conversations. We have to talk about this, because if we don't keep it up front, it's going to continue to get worse, like it has. And I'm hoping that as we go through this with people like Cal, that we can make a difference. I know we can, even if it's one person at a time. You save one life, you saved one family. You think about the broken families that are out there, and I said it, if you have a family member that's struggling with depression, anxiety, substance abuse, you need to talk to somebody as much as that person that's going through it needs to talk to somebody. Because when I went through it with my son, I actually talked to Modern Assistance of John Christian more than I talked to them when I was going through it, because it was that fear that I couldn't sleep. I was afraid I was going to get that phone call. I was afraid I was going to have to bury my son. And these are the things that our members and their families are going through right now. And just to reach out and be able to get some help, just to get it off your chest. I like to say, I would tell the membership at the union meeting, it's the noise in my head. And when I talk to somebody, does it shut it off? No, not all the time. But does it turn it down? Yes, it turns it down. And just to turn that down a little bit, and to give you a clearer perspective, and not be in my mind, but have somebody, a professional, almost do my thinking for me, just to give me a different perspective. It sometimes, or it does all the time, it gets me out of that loop that's playing in my head. And that's why reaching out for help is so important. It can just change your perspective.
And Sean, when we talk about the caring culture, it's putting a safety net around everyone on a job site, right? It's a safety net around everyone in that union hall. It's letting people know that they are a person, and no matter how tough times get, people care and have their back. It's about being that brothers and sisters keeper that you and I talk about. It's a true feeling. You can feel that on a job site. You can feel it in a union local. You can feel it at a contractor, how they care about people. And I've been very fortunate. In 2016, I helped launch that Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. I had helped people with substance use disorders, but never been a specialist. So I worked in the construction industry since 1996, doing safety, health, and wellness, and teaching contractors how to build this in to their safety, health, and wellness programs, and really looked at it as a workforce issue, how to build it into the employment functions, how we could teach people on the benefit side. So when I was working for a contractor in Washington State from 2014 on, the first thing I did as a contractor was go to the 3 signatory unions we partnered with. And I let them know that we were going to be doing safety differently. We were going to talk about safety 24/7, not just getting people home safe at the end of a shift, but getting people back to work safe from home. And that spoke to the unions. We built this great trust, and we started looking out for their employees, and they started trusting us with employees. And there were a lot of powerful lessons. So we've been building some of those resources in for suicide prevention as well. And I think what's been powerful, 2 different walks of life, but our paths have intersected. And I'm really proud to consider you a new friend. Really appreciate you sharing, again, your personal story. And it's just great to know that we're united in this cause to bring hope and to build that caring culture and to help General President Dean, Kevin Burns, Kevin Hilton, and everyone else. Vicki O'Leary is a person I speak highly of often in the ironworkers. She's been a person who's done some great things to drive change. And also folks like Wayne Cressup give me hope that we can tackle this from safety, health, and wellness as well. What else would you like to conclude with? Any last stories that you'd like to share about your journey or to give people hope for that future?
Just the fact that this conversation has taken place, like I said earlier, gives me great hope. I know in the past, people were just too afraid to step forward and ask for help because they thought they were going to be not going to go to work, that they were going to be labeled a drug addict or a drunk, or the stigma that's involved. I think that this is breaking down barriers. It's like I mentioned earlier, Cal, it's like taking one brick. Every time we talk, every time we do this, every time somebody from our leadership steps up and says something, it's like taking one more brick out of the wall. To take that wall down, that will give people the hope that was given to me, that I can open up and I can ask somebody for help, and I'm going to get that help. And I'm not going to be judged. And it's really good to know that this is the direction that we're taking, that we're there and we are our brothers and sisters keepers. Because without my brothers and sisters, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I know I wouldn't be sitting here today. And without the brothers and sisters that are at our AA meeting, that are active in recovery, without our EAP, without the Gavin Foundation, we'd be burying more people. And we'd have more people in crisis. And the sooner that people, if you're feeling depressed or you're feeling anxious, the sooner you get to talk to somebody, because I know for a lot of people that suffer from depression and anxiety, they self-medicate, and it can turn into alcoholism or addiction. So the sooner that we can get people to talk to somebody and seek help, and that's what I see as hopeful, is that we're doing that right now, so that it doesn't become a full-blown addiction and worst, a suicide.
Sean and I wanted to share some of the resources that are now posted on the Impact website. The first one is suicide prevention resources. We'll be talking with Kevin Burns and Kevin Hilton about putting additional resources for opioids and addiction as well. It's available at this link. Secondly, Shout out to the ironworkers, Kevin Burns, putting together crisis strategy plans for both local unions and signatory contractors. These are foldouts that provide a lot of information in a condensed guide. Very useful resources. Please download those. There's educational webinars archived now on the website. You'll see the one Sean and others did on October 30th, one that I did on November 19th of 2020, and recently January 14th. There are other webinars archived. We also wanted to leave information for USA and Canada crisis hotlines, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 800-273-8255, and crisis text line. You can type or text help to 741-741. In Canada, crisis text line has the same contact info, but for mental health and crisis services in Canada, use Crisis Services Canada 833-456-4566. Please share that information with your family members and your union members. The last item that we'd like to highlight is the Construction Industry Alliance for Suicide Prevention. There's toolbox talks, there's posters in English and in Spanish, and other resources available. www.preventconstructionsuicide.com. Sean and I are going to conclude with our contact information. Sean, any closing comment?
Thank you for being here and for listening to us and for bringing this topic to the forefront.
If you need to get a hold of Sean, you can contact him at his email or his cell phone. Likewise for me, if I can help you help others, don't hesitate to call. Thank you very much, Ironworkers. Thank you for impact. Sean and I appreciated this conversation. It's time to take action. Thank you.